5:30 and a quorum is present, so I will call this meeting of the Madison Plan Commission of October 3rd, 2022 to order. First, we'll hear some information from our technical facilitator.
All right, welcome to our virtual Plan Commission meeting. We're going to cover a few basic items before beginning. If you lose connection at any point during the meeting, you can reconnect by clicking the link or calling the number in your original email. To members and city staff members, if you are able, please activate your video and keep it on for the duration of the meeting. Staff, if you are able, please activate your video when you are speaking. Use the raise hand feature when you'd like to be recognized to speak or ask questions. Staff, click raise hand when you are asked a question. The chair would do the best to call on committee members in the order in which their hands are raised. Lowering your hand will take you out of the queue. Members of the public who have registered to speak, the name you entered in Zoom must match the name you entered in registration. You will remain muted until called upon. The clerk will tell you when your time is up. After speaking, a member of the body may ask you a question. If you need to share documentation with the commission, please send it to the email listed in today's agenda. Chair, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jesse. Next, we'll go to communications, disclosures, and recusals. Do any members of the body have any disclosures or recusals? I've got one disclosure. I worked for a number of years for the State of Wisconsin Investment Board, and there are items on the agenda 11, 12, 13, and 14 having to do with the investment board's building. The fact that I work there will not impact any decisions that I would make in regard to that proposal. Next on the agenda is public comment. I thought we would have Alder Abbas here, but I don't see that he is here yet. He has a couple of things that he wants to say about agenda items 25 and 26, and I know that he has a meeting at 6. So if he appears, we will take a break to hear from Alder Abbas. Next on the agenda, and other than that, I do not believe there is any public comment. Is that correct, Heather? Yes, okay. Next on the agenda are minutes of September 19th. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Seeing no raised hands, is there a motion to approve the September 19th minutes? Moved by Commissioner Cantrell. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Fernandez. We will come to a vote unless I see a raised hand to object. The motion passes unanimously. Seeing no raised hands, the motion does pass unanimously. Next is the schedule of upcoming meetings. We have regular meetings scheduled for October 24th, November 7th, November 21st, and those would be at 5:30. Next is our consent agenda, and we do have a fairly long consent agenda. I will read the agenda numbers first and ask if there are any commissioners who wish to have any of those withdrawn from the consent agenda. The first item on the consent agenda, agenda item 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, and then 9 and 10 are also on the consent agenda. Then 15, 16, and agenda item 17 were withdrawn by the applicant and should be placed on file without prejudice. And I would note that we've got a shared screen tonight to show us those items that are on the consent agenda. Then also on the consent agenda, item 23, 24, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, and 32 are all on the consent agenda. Are there any requests for separation of any of those items? Heather.
Just a quick clarification. Thank you, Chair Zellers, that items 15 and 16 are on the consent agenda. It's 17 and 18 that are recommended to be placed on file as the application has been withdrawn.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that correction. Okay, I don't see any raised hands requesting separation. I will read those items then into the record before we take a vote on the consent agenda. Agenda item 2, Legistar 73709, amending the master list of street names and designations and amending the city engineer's street numbering map referred to in section 10.34 paren 2 and 10.34 paren 4 Madison General Ordinances by changing the name of a portion of Fiedler Lane and one private street upon final attachment of Town of Madison lands to the City of Madison to allow for proper addressing within the City of Madison, 14th Alder District. Agenda item 3, Legistar 7315, determining a public purpose and necessity and adopting a relocation order for the acquisition of land interests required for the construction, maintenance, and use of a sanitary sewer access drive to maintain a public sanitary sewer east of Parkside Drive connecting to an MMSD sanitary sewer interception in the 3rd Alder District. Then under new business, agenda item 4, Legistar 7368, amending and updating the City of Madison's extraterritorial plat approval jurisdiction within which the city will continue to review land divisions and subdivision plats. Agenda item 6, Legistar 73471, amending table 28L-2 in MGO section 28181 and amending MGO section 28.206 to increase fees. Agenda item 7, Legistar 73472, amending sections of chapter 28 to allow dwelling units in mixed use buildings in certain residential districts. Agenda item 8, Legistar 73474, amending several sections of chapter 28 of the Madison General Ordinances to create mission boxes as a permitted use in various districts. Agenda item 9, Legistar 72892, substitute, creating Madison General Ordinances to change the zoning of property located at 7035 through 7151 Littlemore Drive, 7202 Cottage Grove Road, 851 Harrington Drive, and 6901 Bluff Point Drive, 16th Alder District, from Conservancy District to Parks and Recreation Districts. Agenda item 10, Legistar 72778, located at 7035 Littlemore Drive, 16th Alder District. Consideration of a conditional use in the proposed Parks and Recreation District for a community center to allow construction of a shelter in Door Creek Park. Agenda item 15, Legistar 73476, creating ordinances to change the zoning of property located at 7101 U.S. Highways 12 and 18 and 4502 Brant Road, 16th Alder District, from Parks and Recreation District to Industrial General District. Agenda item 16, Legistar 73194, approving the preliminary plat of the Dane County Sustainability Campus subdivision on land addressed as 7101 U.S. Highways 12 and 18 and 4502 Brant Road, CTHAB, 16th Alder District, and approving a certified survey map of same to create 2 lots. And then Agenda items 17 and 18, Legistar 72777 and Legistar 72779 were withdrawn by the applicant and should be placed on file without prejudice. Then continuing the consent agenda, agenda item 23, Legistar 73200, located at 5602 through 5606 Schrader Road, 19th Alder District. Consideration of a demolition permit to demolish 2 residents. Agenda item 24, Legistar 73203, located at 5602 through 5606 Schrader Road, Urban Design District 2, 19th Alder District. Consideration of a conditional use in the Commercial Corridor Transitional District for a multifamily dwelling containing greater than 36 dwelling units to allow construction of a 4-story, 84-unit apartment building. Agenda item 27, Legistar 72843, located at 3841 East Washington Avenue and 3909 through 3913 Lean Road, Urban Design District 5, 3rd Alder District. Consideration of a conditional use in the Commercial Corridor Transitional District for a multi-family dwelling containing greater than 36 dwelling units to allow a hotel to be converted into 190 apartments. Agenda item 28, Legistar 73120, located at 931 East Main Street, 6th Alder District. Consideration of a conditional use in the Traditional Employment District for an arts technical trade school. Consideration of a conditional use in the same district for a reception hall. Consideration of a conditional use also in the TE district for a restaurant tavern, and consideration of a conditional use in the TE district for a general retail, all to allow a cooking school, reception hall, restaurant, tavern, and spice sales tenant within a multi-tenant commercial building. Agenda item 29, Legistar 73183, located at 2403 East Springs Drive, 17th Alder District. Consideration of a demolition permit to allow demolition of a commercial building. Agenda item 30, Legistar 73184, located at 7601 Portage Road, 17th Alder District. Consideration of a demolition permit to demolish a single-family residence. Agenda item 31, Legistar 73353, located at 4142 Monona Drive, 15th Alder District. Consideration of a conditional use in the Neighborhood Mixed Use District for an adult family home located within 2,500 feet of another adult family home or existing community living arrangement. Agenda item 32, Legistar 7358, located at 817 Big Stone Trail, 9th Alder District. Consideration of a conditional use in the Suburban Residential Consistent District to construct a single-family residence exceeding 10,000 square feet in floor area. I will open the public hearing. I will close the public hearing. There are no registrants wishing to speak. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Moved by Commissioner Cantrell. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Solheim. And I will assume unanimous consent unless there is a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands to object, the consent agenda is passed unanimously. I see that Alder Abbas has now joined us, so I will recognize Alder Abbas. Alder Abbas, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that opportunity. I have a neighborhood meeting in 15 minutes, so thank you so much for your service for City of Madison Plan Commissioner members. I would like to speak on agenda item number 25, legislative file number 73204, and agenda item number 26, legislative file number 73205. I will be very brief. The demolition and creating a new car wash at the existing location. The existing location is a big problem for the neighborhood. The way it is used, the way the vacuum cleaners are placed, the way it's a manual car wash, it's really loud, create a lot of nuisance for the resident, and resident and also as well as me find it's very welcoming to see this investment and creating a more enclosed environment and creating an environment where people can come and they can go through auto car wash rather than manually washing it and doing stuff outside the facility, which we usually see at that facility. So I'm very supportive of that, and I hope we can grant them a demolition permit and construction permit. So with that, thank you so much, and I will conclude my comments. Thanks.
Thank you for joining.
One more thing, quick. Sorry.
That's okay.
And also, I personally talked to the business owner. It's a minority-owned business, and his previous history of maintaining businesses, that was one of the concern neighbor had, because existing facility is not very well maintained. So with this new owner who purchased this site, in his previous history, it is also, it's good to see that we're getting in the hand of the property where it will be maintained and operated properly. So thanks.
Thank you for joining us, Alder Abbas. Are there any questions for Alder Abbas before he leaves us? Seeing no raised hands, again, thank you, Alder Abbas, for your comments. Returning to our agenda, and again, agenda items 2, 3, and 4 were passed on the consent agenda. The next item is agenda item 5, Legistar 72659, amending Madison General Ordinance Section 28.183, paren 5, paren A, 6, to allow that the Plan Commission Secretary or District Alder may advise applicants to present at the Urban Design Commission prior to Plan Commission for a conditional use application. And again, this was on the consent agenda, but has been taken off because there is a registrant in opposition. And staff member Katie Bannon was going to give us a few comments about what this is. Katie?
Yeah, thanks, Chair Zellers. A lot of it was covered within what's already been read. So just to give a short summary, the purpose of this is to codify a practice commonly requested by alders that the code doesn't currently cover. So it allows for more predictable, efficient process overall when design guidance from the UDC could benefit the Plan Commission in their review of a conditional use. So alders and the Plan Commission Secretary will be able to anticipate the need for UDC comment and recommendation, and therefore advise an applicant to present at UDC before the Plan Commission hearing. So I'm just here to answer any questions you might have. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Katie. We'll come back to questions after the public hearing. So I will open the public hearing. We do have one registrant, Alex Salutos. Hammersley Avenue, Madison, opposed and wishing to speak. Alex, you have 3 minutes.
Just testing. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thanks, Chair. While I see the intentions are good, I can't see the benefits of the proposed change. It has no teeth. It codifies UDC review of some projects is still a political decision, which isn't fair or good government. It won't protect citizens in our neighborhoods from large, poorly designed projects from getting a political pass on review by the UDC. You don't refer projects now to the UDC that should be reviewed by them. Think 3734 Speedway Road. There are some significant aspects of that project that just would not fly with the UDC. Despite being asked to refer this project to the UDC, you refused. I served on the steering committee for the neighborhood plan. I live a block from the project. This change feels like a stick in the eye. It's a brutal reminder, which will be law, that it's a political process. It needs to stop before more damage is done. Why leave it up to an applicant to decide? Why not allow the Alder secretary or chair of the Plan Commission or 20% of the property owners within 200 feet of the project to review and refer an application to the UDC? Or better yet, just close the loopholes in the zoning ordinance and eliminate the politics, so projects that should be reviewed by the UDC are. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Are there any questions for our registrant? Any questions for our registrant? Seeing no raised hands, I will close the public hearing. Are there any questions for staff? Commissioner Fernandez.
Yeah, thank you. I guess I would just like staff to respond to that. If I understand correctly, the commenter is saying that more projects should be referred to UDC, or they should be required. It should be a requirement. So I have to agree, at least to the extent that this doesn't seem to have teeth. I'm not quite sure what the benefit is of doing this.
Katie, can you take that one?
Yes. So I heard the same thing, that the commenter is looking for more projects to go to UDC. We already have a list of what's required to go to UDC. So this is just for conditional uses. Standard 9 in the conditional uses says that when we're looking at design as part of a conditional use, that today the Plan Commission may require the applicant to submit plans to the Urban Design Commission for comment and recommendation. And so this would just be adding that in addition to the Plan Commission, the Alder or Plan Commission Secretary can anticipate that need when the Plan Commission is going to have to consider that Standard 9 for conditional uses, that they also have the option to refer for that, again, just a comment and recommendation.
Okay. You have the option to recommend, but not to actually refer. Is that correct?
The option for applicants to go to Urban Design Commission for comment and recommendation. So the Urban Design Commission doesn't have to approve these. These are conditional uses that otherwise wouldn't be required to go to Urban Design Commission.
Right, but nor would the applicant be required to even request Urban Design Commission review, right? It just allows staff to recommend it, and the applicant would still be able to say either that they choose not to, or okay.
Right, yeah, it probably wouldn't be a good choice, because we're thinking rather than going to the Plan Commission to then send you back to UDC, just start with UDC and then go to the Plan Commission.
Right.
Heather, did you have something to add?
Thank you. I'm satisfied.
Heather, did you have anything to add? No. Okay. Commissioner Solheim.
Thank you. I was wondering if you could clarify how often, if you have this information, projects do get referred due to Condition 9. I think I can remember like 2 developments, maybe. I'm just trying to get a sense of how many could have avoided that.
Yeah, Heather probably has a better idea on that than I do.
Heather?
Sure. I don't have the exact numbers, but I would say, it's probably a handful per year that the Plan Commission refers to UDC. So something will arrive at Plan Commission, and the Plan Commission will decide, ooh, this has a lot of design issues. We'd like an advisory recommendation from the Urban Design Commission. And so the Plan Commission would refer it to the Urban Design Commission. And I'd say, honestly, another handful, probably each year, have been going to UDC because they are anticipating that referral by the Plan Commission. When you look at our zoning code now, though, there's no process that really allows for that to happen. It's just been, urged by alders and agreed to by applicants. What we're doing here is we're putting that in code so that it's an option. An applicant doesn't have to wait until they arrive at Plan Commission and get that referral back to UDC, which is often another month of time, right, before they can come back to Plan Commission with that recommendation. We're explicitly allowing an alder or staff to encourage, hey, we really think that this is going to rise to that level. You're likely to get referred to the Urban Design Commission for a design recommendation. And why not do that before going to Plan Commission? Save yourselves, 2, 4, 6 weeks of time. So that's really what this is for. And I think it's to really a handful of projects per year.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think this is, I understand the background behind it, and it can add significant time when you have to go back and come back for sure. I am a little concerned, I guess, about if it could get a little out of hand in terms of, surrounding neighbors wanting to, ask their alder to send it to UDC, and just the sort of design by crowd masses, which can happen as a result of that. So, I think if we move forward, this maybe we'd think about, do you think this is something that you could track from a staff level in terms of like how many per year? Because it might be something that we want to reconsider if it's not being used in the way it was intended.
Yes, absolutely. I think we can track it easily.
Great. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Fernandez.
Thank you. Question to staff. Would there be a problem with rewording this to say that the alder or staff can make the referral and make that a mandatory referral? I mean, Plan Commission has that authority right now. Could staff or the alder assume that authority? I mean, I guess I'm concerned because today you could advise somebody to do that. What does this mean that once this is passed, that even if you advise today, if you advise somebody, I suppose UDC could say, well, we're not going to do it for you. But presumably, if they are now advised by the alder or staff, UDC would be required to consider it. Is that accurate? But so that's one question. And why not just allow staff the authority to make that referral?
Katie?
Yeah, I think we decided we wanted to leave it a little bit more to an applicant to decide and have the Plan Commission still have the authority to make that referral. We're just really giving the applicant the opportunity to present to the UDC first, which would be to their benefit as far as the timeline as Heather was explaining. But they could still go to Plan Commission first, chancing that maybe the Plan Commission would say, yeah, this is fine. We don't need that UDC comment and recommendation to make our decision. And that would be kind of at their option.
Heather, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Not really. I think it probably helps to think about it from a few different perspectives. If there's an applicant with, a very urgent need to get a decision by the Plan Commission, I'm trying to think of a case where an applicant would decide not to take that advice and go to urban design. I think it's if they decide, hey, with our architect on board, we can make a really strong case at Plan Commission. We believe Plan Commission will approve this project. And so we're not going to take the advice of the alder or staff to go to Urban Design Commission first. I think it's a little bit risky. I think most applicants would decide, okay, we may as well do this rather than risk being referred there anyway by the Plan Commission. So I agree with Katie. I think it's best to let it be advisory by alders and staff who sometimes, I think to Commissioner Solheim's question, perhaps an alder is swayed by one constituent to send a really well-designed project to the Urban Design Commission that would pass with flying colors at Plan Commission. That's just a scenario. It's not a real one. But, that applicant would have their own choice to make there as to whether to follow that advice or whether to go to Plan Commission. You as the Plan Commission are the final decision-making body on conditional uses. And so, I think keeping that in your hands is really the staff preference with the way the ordinance is written.
Thank you, Heather. Any follow-ups, Commissioner Fernandez? No. Okay. Are there any further questions of staff? Seeing no raised hands, do we have a motion? Commissioner Cantrell.
I'm going to recommend that the Plan Commission approve Legistar 72659, and that it be forwarded to the City Council with a recommendation of approval.
Do we have a second? Seconded by Alder Paulson. Commissioner Cantrell, did you wish to speak to your motion?
Yes, just briefly. I think this is a good amendment. I guess I don't have the concerns that were raised. I think that if an alder or the Plan Commission advise an applicant to go to urban design, I think that they will do that. And if they choose not to, then I think that the Plan Commission will have to review the project without that. And if they feel it's necessary, they could then refer it to the Urban Design Committee. But I think this is a good amendment, and that's why I'm recommending it be approved.
Thank you. Any other comments or discussion? Alder Heck.
Thank you. Obviously, I'm supporting this and agree with what Commissioner Cantrell had to say. I did want to recognize Mr. Saludos' comments, and I don't know as if I agree with all of them. Maybe some of them have some merit, but I think that this is really dealing with a particular issue, and that his comments were really, I think it would need to be addressed by a broader conversation. This is really about an applicant having the opportunity to save some time in certain situations, and all the rest of the comments and discussion about neighbors or who might have the ability to refer things to UDC, I think are another conversation, and it might be that we want to do that at some point. But I think this particular small change is worth supporting. Thanks.
Thank you, Alder Heck. Commissioner Solheim.
Thank you. Just following up on my earlier comments, I would just ask if staff can look into how this could be tracked, just to keep an eye on it. I don't think, it sounds like it's kind of formalizing something which is already happening at a certain level with people deciding to go. But I do, greatly rely on UDC's input and advice, and also want to be cognizant of not unnecessarily sending projects to them over time. So if that's something that we're able to track in the future, that would be great.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments or discussion? Seeing no raised hands, we'll come to a vote, and I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands to object, the motion passes unanimously. Then agenda items 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, we're all on the consent agenda. So we're on to agenda item 11. And 11, 12, 13, and 14 are going to be considered as one public hearing. Agenda item 11, a Legistar 73476, creating Madison General Ordinances to change the zoning of property located at 121 East Wilson Street, 4th Alder District, from urban mixed use district to downtown core district. Agenda item 12, Legistar 73189, located at 121 East Wilson Street, 4th Alder District, consideration of a demolition permit to allow demolition of an office building and parking structure. Agenda item 13, Legistar 73191, 121 East Wilson Street, 4th Alder District, consideration of a conditional use in the proposed downtown core district for a new building greater than 20,000 square feet, or that has more than 4 stories, consideration of a conditional use in the downtown core district for an outdoor recreation and area, and consideration of a conditional use for projections into the Capitol View preservation limit. to allow construction of a 14-story mixed-use building with approximately 19,500 square feet of commercial space and 337 dwelling units. Agenda item 14, Legistar 73352, approving a certified survey map of property owned by Quad Capital Partners located at 121 East Wilson Street, 4th Alder District. First, we will hear from Colin Hunt. Thank you, Colin. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Zellers, and thank you, Commission. The applicant for this item is seeking approval of the zoning map amendment to change the zoning at 121 East Wilson from UMX to DC, the CSM, the demolition permit for the existing office building that houses SWIB, the State of Wisconsin Investment Board, and the necessary conditional uses to construct the 14-story mixed-use building. Staff believes that all applicable standards for the demolition permit, zoning map amendments, and the land divisions are met. Staff does refer the Commission to comments in the report regarding standard conditional use standards of approval 5 and 17. Specifically regarding standard 5, the applicant has not yet submitted a traffic impact analysis or a transportation management plan. But traffic engineering staff have been in contact with the development team and their traffic engineers. They believe that TIA and TDMP can be adequately reviewed and approved prior to final sign-off. And regarding the other standard, the building plans include an elevator overrun of nearly 16 feet and a mechanical yard of more than 12 feet into the Capitol View preservation height limit. These heights are pretty in line with other conditional use requests approved in the Cap View height area, but staff have recommended a condition that the applicant work to bring both projections down to the extent possible and to reduce the area of the mechanical yard as much as possible, both to reduce the visual impact of those projections above the Capitol View preservation height limit. All things considered, staff do believe that the Commission can find the standards approved and approve the proposal. And if the Commission does have questions, I will be available after the public hearing.
Thank you, Colin. Our first speaker is, I'll open the public hearing, is Dan Kennelly. O'Sheridan Street, Madison, in support, wishing to speak, representing Quad Capital Partners. Dan, you have 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. We were actually going to have Doug go first for our presentation. So if I can give my first.
Yeah, okay. So then that would be Doug Hirsch, University Row, Madison, in support, wishing to speak, representing Quad Capital Partners, and then we'll return to Dan. Doug.
Good evening. Thank you. My name is Doug Hirsch. I'm an architect with Potter Lawson, and I'll just try to go through these slides super briefly to meet the 3-minute mark, and then Dan can speak. The next slide, please. This is just a site location. Next slide. The key points here are this is the site plan and the ground floor plan. It's the idea of the promenade, pedestrian promenade that goes through the site and provides access to a lakeside terrace with views to the lake. The whole promenade and the lakeside terrace, as well as East Wilson Street, will be activated by the intent of a food hall, a restaurant, and additional retail spaces. Next slide. This just shows the second floor there's a green roof and a fitness area. So there's some outdoor space there. Next slide. The next slide shows the basic kind of configuration of the building, breaking the building down into 2 sort of towers facing the city, and then 3 stepping points along the facade facing the lake. Next slide. The main point here is the amenity floor. On the 14th floor, we have a pool, a terrace facing the lake, another terrace facing the city, and several amenity spaces on the west wing there. Next slide. The exterior facade, we have taken a lot of time to design something that fits well into the city and will be a long-term benefit to the city as far as the design goes. And we can talk about this further, but this shows the two main towers with the central courtyard. Next slide. A little bit more detail at the ground level and landscaping at the ground level to enhance the pedestrian experience. Next slide. And this is a view of the promenade space, the idea of outdoor seating, landscaping, and access to activity. Next slide. And then once you go through the promenade, this is the terrace facing the lake. I think we have over 10,000 square feet of actual pedestrian terrace space on the site. Next slide. A view from John Nolan shows the building kind of broken up into 3 volumes and its steps along the site. Next slide. And these are the long views that the city requested in looking at the building for studying the Capitol View preservation height. This is from Olin Park. Next slide. Esther Park. Next slide. And Olbrich Park. And the final slide just shows an image of the building at night.
Thank you, Doug. That does conclude your available time. Next, then, to speak is Dan Kennelly, in support, wishing to speak, representing Quad Capital Partners. And again, you have 3 minutes, Dan.
Great. You can go to the next slide. So thanks, everybody. My name is Dan Kennelly, again, with Quad Capital Partners. We are the investment management arm of a family-operated Ann Arbor-based real estate company called First Martin, with a focus on making high-quality investments and long-term ownership. We think we've assembled really a best-in-Madison team here, led by local partners, and we're excited to deliver this great project on an important site. Next slide, please. Some details on the project. So we envision the mix of uses that's shown at the top, a variety of unit types and sizes to appeal to different tenants. And a key point here that Doug talked about, a really robust ground floor that's thoughtfully composed and that pulls the commercial through the building from Wilson Street out to the Lakeview Terrace on the John Nolan facing side of the building, which we're excited about. Next slide. Colin's report talked about this, but we think the project aligns closely with the city's plans for this location. Next slide. Touching on a few benefits of the project, first, sustainability is really woven into the design of the building, starting with the location, very walkable, bike-friendly, transit-accessible location, lots of green roof space, lots of green building systems incorporated into the design. And then with the promenade and the Lakeview Terrace, we're thinking this is going to be a great destination for the community and really something that adds to the downtown and to the neighborhood, creating a lot of needed new housing, creating a lot of tax base. And we've designed the project with an eye towards the future vision for the waterfront and ways to tie into that. Next slide, please. This is the project timeline. We acquired the property about a year ago and have been working closely with Alder Revere and the neighborhood and city staff. Had neighborhood meetings over the summer, UDC approval a couple weeks ago, and looking forward to breaking ground early next year. Next slide, please. And then just to close, we recognize that this is a very important site for the city. We all know that Madison's lakes are really our greatest resource. And, you know, as we think about this site, really East and West Wilson Street sort of form a barrier between the downtown and the lakefront. So we made the decision to punch a hole through the building, create the promenade, and pull the commercial through the site and create this very unique experience of the promenade and the terrace, which is something that we think really should be a standard for these unique locations that provide redevelopment opportunities with views of the lake. So with that, I'll close, and Doug and I are happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dan. Are there any questions of Dan or Doug? Commissioner Fernandez.
Yeah, thank you. So this is a question for Dan, I think. I couldn't agree more that this is an absolutely critical location, and certainly for that connection between the Wilson Street and the lake. So I would like you to elaborate a little bit more. You said that somehow provision was being made or for future connection. What does that provision consist of? What might that look like? And how far will that be developed by your proposal? And the second question, somewhat related to that, what will be the nature of access to the promenade? Will that be available to the public, primarily to customers of an eatery there, or could any citizen walk down the promenade and get that view of the lake? So those are my two questions. Thank you.
Dan.
Yeah, thanks very much. Is it possible to put the presentation back on the screen? That might be helpful if we can.
What page were you looking for?
Go to I think it's page 3. There you go. Yeah, so thanks. Great. Appreciate the question. Maybe I'll answer the second part of the question first and then go back to the first part of the question. So in terms of the kind of public access and sort of the experience of this ground floor for the public, first, we do intend that this will remain in private ownership. So as the building owner, we'll own the property. But in terms of the experience of the place, it's very much going to be something that should welcome visitors in. So as you kind of look at the site, if you're a pedestrian on Wilson Street, that promenade through the middle will be this sort of informal seating, some planters, and a space where, as a pedestrian, you will feel very kind of naturally invited to walk into and walk all the way through the site to the other side, which will have a view over Lake Monona. And what's on the right side of the page, the food hall, that will be a space where we're envisioning, thank you, about 8 individual vendors, think sort of local cuisine, small vendor stalls, offering different types of food, informal environment, lots of kind of unprogrammed seating space. So again, as a resident, you can walk through the promenade, you can walk into the food hall, wander around, check out the sights and smells of the food hall, walk out to the lake view. And then on the other side, where there's the restaurant, we are thinking that is more of a traditional restaurant, sit-down restaurant environment, where a portion or most of the seating terrace on that side would be really affiliated with the restaurant. So a little less open to wandering through, a little more, outdoor dining, certainly for the public, but for customers at that restaurant. So, to short answer is very much envision the promenade down to the lake view as space that on any given day, a resident or a visitor can walk through and feel comfortable walking through. And likewise, the food hall is going to be this informal environment. And then the commercial spaces on the other side are a little bit more formalized, again, with a restaurant offering this unique, in Madison, kind of lakeview dining experience on the page left. So that's kind of that first question, or sorry, that was your second question on sort of the experience of the space. To go back to the first part of your question, so as I'm sure the commissioners are aware, the city is embarking on this Monona waterfront project. I believe there's actually a meeting about it as we speak. And part of I think we're all excited to see what sort of ideas emerge from that process, and we don't know what they are yet. But part of the idea with the promenade and with this design is that whatever comes of that process, there would be visual linkages to Law Park. Just depending on how things come together, maybe there's some kind of pedestrian linkage. We really don't know. But just philosophically, we tried to design the project, really embrace the fact that, like I said, Wilson Street is kind of this barrier between views of the lake and the downtown, and trying to kind of punch through that to create this at least visual connection, which again, is something that would be great to see up and down Wilson Street as we, as a community, kind of look to the waterfront and reimagining what the waterfront can be. So I hope that answers the question, but if there's follow-ups, happy to say more.
Do you have any follow-ups, Commissioner?
No, I appreciate it. I guess the only follow-up I might have, is there anything in the covenants for the space could a tenant potentially take control of that space in such a way that it became restaurant seating, some of that promenade space, or is that part of the covenants of the building that will remain not formal seating?
Yeah, we haven't created a partnership with any tenants. We are in some discussions with potential operators of the food hall and possibly the restaurant. So we haven't formalized any leases or any arrangements on that front. I will say that as the owner, we are certainly envisioning that the promenade is more, kind of, like I said, sort of informal space, not necessarily associated with the restaurant. And again, the food hall is envisioned as this multi-tenant space. So the outdoor seating on the food hall side would likely not be affiliated with any particular business in the food hall. Again, on the restaurant side, that outdoor seating we are thinking is really affiliated with the restaurant. But and again, this is all a lot of this is more programmatic on the operating side, and like I said, we haven't really formalized that yet. But that's our intent as an owner.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Dan. That helps a lot.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Cantrell.
Yes, this is just kind of a follow-up to Commissioner Fernandez's question about the linkage of this project to the proposed planning of the linking the square with the lake and potentially expanding Monona Terrace and Law Park. And it appears and very nicely that this project will could link to that proposed plan quite well, and I'm assuming that is the case, and you're going to be looking at their proposals as closely as you can. But one of the questions I have is, what are the green rectangles on the sides of the buildings? Is that green space? Is it stormwater management? For stormwater management, or what are those areas on the both sides of the building, not in front?
No, at the side, at the property lines on the sides.
Yes, that area and the other area.
Those are green roof areas. Those are over on the right-hand side towards Marina Towers. That's over top of the parking garage below. I think that's in deference to not having outdoor communal space up against the condominium building. And then on the other side, that is the actual space between the two buildings that starts to step down the hill.
Okay. So that does individuals could not access that area. It's kind of walled off from use.
Pretty much, yes. Okay. There is stormwater retention cisterns below the stepping element on the west side, and there is a small dog run at the base of the building on that side as well.
Okay. Doug, could you show the elevations facing the lake again? I don't know if you got to those. Okay. Okay. Thank you. The other question I have is, in the project, did you provide for visitor parking? I know that you provided parking for obviously the residents of the building, but do you provide visitor parking? Doug or Dan?
I can start. The answer is really no. We provide about a 1-to-1 ratio for residents, but our thought is with the Pinckney Street public garage right up the street and street parking, that there's sufficient public parking in the area. There's also the Monona Terrace garage. So our thought is that visitors should take advantage of the city parking utility facility that's nearby.
Okay. I always find that problematic, but I guess that's on you. And one last question, and I asked this of many developers. Why? I know this is entirely apartments, and why are you not proposing at least some condominiums in the building?
Dan or Doug?
Yeah, I can start it. I think the short answer is we're, kind of monitoring the market and trying to get a read for what makes the most sense at this time for segments of the market that are growing in Madison. And as we look at that data, we continue to see, first, a lot of growth in Madison. Second, a lot of demand for downtown. And third, most of that demand is people that are moving to Madison or moving within Madison and choosing to rent. So our business model at this point is that the building is 100% apartments for rent, based on the data we've looked at and our kind of approach to the site and the project.
Okay. Well, I guess from my perspective, you may be missing some of the market that is necessary for the downtown, but again, I think that eventually that will be realized. But again, thank you. I think it looks good from my perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Cantrell. Commissioner Solheim.
Thank you. Is there any way you could go back to the slide with the first floor plan? Thank you so much. Just a quick question. The retail back of house I see in the top right there, does that include the trash area for the food hall? I do see commercial trash on the left, but that seems like a far distance. So
yes, there's because of the promenade, the food hall is sort of separated from the main loading and trash area. So we wanted to provide the ability for them not to have to drag the trash across the promenade.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Thank you. And then one small thing that came to mind. Well, the promenade could at times be quite the wind tunnel. The landscaping features and things and that, I mean, they looked pretty substantial, but I just, any clarity that you have or any ways that you thought about designing that just to make sure that things don't fly through there at times.
Yeah, I think we'll end up monitoring that as we go. I'm sure that on some days it will be windy and the furniture in that area will have to be substantial. And the planters and the landscaping, are all built in to the promenade, so they should be safe.
Great. Yeah. That's all I had. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Commissioner Shepherd.
Hi, just a quick comment about, I think I saw this in the materials that you submitted, but could you talk a little bit about the bird safe glass? What I'm interested in is that to hear if you're using it around the entire building, and if not, why not? If you can just talk about the bird safe glass. Thank you.
Yes, I think if you could pull up the Wilson Street elevation, the bird safe ordinance played a big part in how the building is designed. You can see the gradation of the metal panels in the glass portions of the building where they're a bit heavier towards the base of the building, and then they get lighter as they go up. Most of the bird collisions occur down low, closer to tree height and up to 60 feet. So within the base of the building and up to that 60 feet, we're incorporating less glass and then increasing the glass as it goes up the building. So we're meeting the bird ordinance by the building has less than 50% glass overall, and the glass units are broken down to smaller than 50 square feet per unit within that 60 feet to the ground.
Okay. And the same composition is on the other side of the building?
Yes. And on the other side of the building, the majority of the lower part of the building is all solid where the parking garage is. So that there's even more solid on this facade.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Alder Heck.
Thank you. This might be for Doug. We heard from staff and in their staff report that, some mention of the capital height limit and previously approved buildings and how their elevator runs and the mechanical rooms are somewhat subjectively allowed to be above the capital height limit. And it seemed to me that the height, at least, of your proposed structures on top of the roof were at the top end of those precedents. And perhaps the horizontal extent was somewhat in line, maybe also a little bit at the high end. I appreciate the slides, the renderings that showed what those would look like from different vantage points that would be probably typical views. But I'm interested in knowing what you have to offer. Staff said we'll negotiate and perhaps we can lower those. How do you feel about the prospect of being able to reduce either horizontally or vertically those structures? Is there some wiggle room?
I think there might be some potential in the horizontal dimension. We've kept them as low as we can. We have a central plant for the building. There's heat pumps in each of the units. So we have cooling tower and boilers and those types of things that have to go on the rooftop. And so we also have the only thing that really is tall or taller is the elevator overrun, and that's in order to get equipment up into those mechanical equipment rooms on the roof. The location of those rooms had been stepped back from both facades in the neighborhood of 50 to 60 feet from the John Nolan side and the East Wilson side. So, if you're on the streets or somewhere in the city, those mechanical screens are set fairly far from the street. And that the top floor of the building is also set back slightly, and it's that top floor that sort of meets that capital view preservation height. But we can continue to work with our mechanical engineers to try to come up with ways to try to reduce that. I'm not sure that we'll have too much success there.
Okay, those details were helpful, and I recognize that reducing the horizontal extent is almost just as important, or can be just as effective as reducing the height. I appreciate that. Just one more quick question. Since you have some room up there, I think there are some green roof features up there. Is that correct? And is there any room for solar panels?
There are some green roof features for stormwater, and there's always probably a little bit of room left for potential solar panels.
Is that something you've considered at all, or not?
I think it's something that we've been looking into and getting proposals to see if that would work.
Okay. All right. Thanks for the information.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Heck. I don't see any further hands for these two registrants. I do have a couple of questions. In regard to EV charging, as undoubtedly you've been seeing, the electric vehicle purchasing is really quite robust right now. And my question is, are you putting in only the minimal of what is required by city ordinance, or are you looking to address what seems to be a booming market in electric vehicles to allow for some more electric vehicle charging stations for your residents?
Yeah, Doug, I don't know if you want to start. Do you recall what the baseline number is?
Yes, there's 8 standard EV stalls installed, which is 2.3% of the overall.
Got it. Yeah, and I think it is an important question, and going back to Alder Heck's comment, we are very very interested and I would say close to committed to doing solar on the roof. Looking at it closely, since that's related. And then yes, Chair Zellers, we are and will look at incorporating a higher number of EV charging than that. We are certainly aware that our tenants are likely to be driving electric cars from day one, and even more so going forward. We have started discussions with MG&E as well as Focus on Energy. We're thinking about technology and location, but yeah, I mean, we're monitoring the market, and we'll likely incorporate more EV charging stations as we dial in the kind of final layout.
Well, I would certainly urge you to do that because that is a big issue that I've heard in people who are looking to rent and in condos. So I would urge you to be out in front and get more EV charging stations in. The other question I have is on deliveries. Can you show us where you are intending to accommodate deliveries? You've got quite a few units there, and as we all know, with online shopping and all of that kind of thing, food delivery, it has become a huge issue on our curb space and streets. Are you accommodating this somewhere? I didn't really see it.
Sure. Yeah, I can start, and then Doug can maybe chime in. So, first we've tried to push the main loading, trash, and kind of back of house functions over to the west or page left side. So you can see there's a loading area that will be large enough for trucks to kind of pull in. There's a very large parcel room. So recognizing how more and more common deliveries are, the FedEx or Amazon or whoever delivery driver will be trained by our managers to kind of enter the building at the loading area and put parcels in that big package room. And again, trying to kind of push that function to that loading aisle on the left side of the page, away from the residential neighbors on the other side. And one kind of related thing I'd add is move in and move out. We've designed the parking structure to facilitate the sort of most typical sized U-Hauls, up to a 17-foot U-Haul, which is generally the largest you see for apartments like this, to be able to actually drive into the parking structure under the building and load and unload for move in and move out within the parking under the building rather than on street. So we've tried to accommodate it. Certainly aware that this is an urban environment and a tight space, so it's not going to be perfect. But we think that with that loading area on the left side, the move in, move out potentially happening under the building, that this will function pretty well. One thing I would add as a related note, we are engaging Greystar as our property manager. So there'll be on-site property management, very professionalized property management that will kind of orchestrate that. And we are sort of thinking about ways to really accommodate the increasing frequency of food pickup and delivery from third-party services, likely using the food hall. So we're thinking about all these things to make it as efficient as possible and least disruptive to the street and the neighbors as well.
Just as a general comment, the Madison Mark, in terms of their move-in kind of thing, there were not infrequently full-size moving vans that would simply park in the street. And I can envision one for the Mark and one for here would pretty much block up Wilson Street. So I do have a bit of a concern about that. And it would take some pretty good management to assure that the move in, move out vehicles are of appropriate size and go under the building rather than simply in the street. So your management company will have a big job, I think, in front of them. Are there any other questions? Alder Paulson.
Yeah, I just wondered if you could talk a little bit more about the food hall and kind of maybe who the vendors you might be and sort of what might be a backup plan if the food hall doesn't work out. I'm thinking back to University Square, which also had kind of a food hall set up, and it didn't work after a couple of years, and it changed over. Now that was a different part of the city and was on a second floor and a different thing. But I'm just curious, kind of, what would be your backup plan if the food hall didn't make it? But I'm also very curious about who your vendors might be and where you're at or discussions on that.
Yeah, it's a great question. We have engaged a food hall designer called Eimer Design to help us kind of lay out the food hall, and we are, like I said, talking with some potential operators. So the intent is that it will have about 8 individual vendor stalls. Some of them will be vented for on-site cooking. Some of them won't. But the vision is that it's really kind of interesting local entrepreneur, food vendors that would set up and operate shops out of the food hall, serving the office lunch crowd as well as evening crowds, and kind of a mix of cuisine, again, with really an emphasis on local merchants filling out this space. To your question, so that's kind of the idea of the food hall. Again, we've like I said, engaged a designer, and we've got a good plan for it. And we are, from kind of some preliminary conversations in the market, we do think that there's a strong level of interest for it, both from the prospective vendors as well as from customers. If for some reason we try the food hall concept and it just doesn't work out, This is great, flexible commercial space. The dimensions are good. The column spacing is good. So there's certainly ways to potentially incorporate an additional restaurant or maybe an additional, commercial use in the space. If for some reason the food hall doesn't work, we did look at some options where the commercial space in the building was really just concentrated on Wilson Street. But, like I said, kind of made the decision to pull it all the way through the site to create this kind of unique experience of the commercial space having these views out over the lake. So we do think that's something that will set it apart in the market and really position it for success, both the restaurant space and the food hall.
Okay. How late do you anticipate the food hall being open till? Is this going to close at 5 or 9 or midnight? Or because I don't know what the ordinances might say for being able to be open for restaurants down there, but.
Yeah, I think it's an operating question that we don't quite have an answer to yet, but I would say first and foremost, our priority will be the tenants that are living above the space. So we're not thinking this would be a bar time situation by any means. Probably into the evening, but not late at night. Again, our priority is the residents upstairs, so we'll want to operate it to not disrupt them or other neighbors.
Okay.
Any further questions, Alder Paulson?
No, just one thing to keep in mind in case the Madison public market doesn't work out. There may be some vendors who are looking for some spaces, so that might be someone else to include in your conversation.
Good comment. Okay, thank you. Commissioner Spencer.
Thank you. I just had thought of another question on your operations. The first floor commercial space looks great, and the public areas, but I saw some other activity spaces on some other floors. Were those going to be open to the public as well? I think it might just be a concept now, but there was like a gaming room and a golf room and some other activities. Are those going to be open to the public as well?
The space on the 14th floor is designed as amenity space for residents, so those would not be open to the public. That is space for the residents.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. We do have one more registrant wishing to speak. Janelle Allen, 132 East Wilson Street, in opposition, wishing to speak. Janelle, you have 3 minutes.
I live in the Madison Mark apartments immediately across the street and think the building looks great, but I would like very much for no variances on top of the building for sticking up higher than the guidelines for the Capitol View preservation heights are. Some of what will be outside of that are boats on the lake and people who are clear across the lake who look to the Capitol. So pushing those things back a little bit really won't help people from those big distances. So my opposition is to giving any amount of variance in terms of height. And if it means the buildings are 1 story shorter than the 14 floors, I would hope that you folks who are in charge of granting variances for those things would not grant variances here. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions of Janelle or our other 2 registrants? Seeing no raised hands, I will close the public hearing. Are there questions of staff? Alder Heck.
Thank you. This is for Colin. I noticed in the staff report a mention of the city being reimbursed for any parking spaces that Common Council should decide are necessary out in front of the building. I can't remember what the figure was in the staff report. I was curious to see that, and I assume that dollar amount is strictly a function of what the parking utility would be losing over the course of 20 years, I think it said. Is that something that's available to us for other projects to include in a development agreement?
So that's specific to situations where there is a parking meter that is being requested to be removed. The most recent one that I can think of prior to this was when the Drury Hotel development came through at Madison College. They had requested to remove a couple of the parking spaces for their new driveways, and $40,000 per spot. I think it's the situations in which that is applicable are pretty limited, and it's mainly the transportation department that dictates that. I think that was a lot of back and forth between traffic engineering and the parking utility to determine whether that was available to as an option and what that is. So yeah, I think it's a real case by case basis, but certainly something that we can pursue in situations, especially downtown.
Yeah, your answer immediately referenced parking meters, and my mind was racing to non-parking meter situations. So I appreciate that. I understand now. Thank you.
Anything else, Alder Heck?
No, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Fernandez.
Thank you. So the idea of a connection between Wilson Street and the lake has been dear to my heart for many years. And some of the proposals were pretty grandiose, but this seemed to be the location where they were most likely. Is that correct? Have we now precluded most options? I mean, assuming that this can't be, condemned for a public space or something like that. What are our options now? Are we down to just Monona Terrace as the only possible place where a bridge over the railroad and John Nolan Drive would be possible? How does this affect our more visionary planning of what could be connections between Wilson Street and the lakeshore?
Colin or Heather? Heather?
Yes, thank you. So I don't have a full, engineering type answer for you here, but I know that, this was one of the sites that, was technically feasible to make such a connection. There is another site just a little bit further east on the other side of the marina where McGrath Development actually dedicated a public easement adjacent to their building. Of course, there's no plan to build a bridge over that, but there's that same sort of porous, through lane, if you will, from East Wilson to the other side. And so it's possible that it could happen there. This proposal before you right now does have that same porousness through the site. And so it's not altogether precluding that possibility. But I think, perhaps our best bet would be a smaller pedestrian bridge, maybe a little bit further to the east.
Let me just follow that up and ask, was there any discussion of a public easement of some sort that would assure some possible use of this site? or is that really out of the question?
We had not discussed the dedication of a public easement in that as you mentioned, the kind of the planning process for Law Park and Lake Monona is underway. So we didn't talk about establishing a public easement, but we did bring up the need for a connection to Law Park very early in the staff's discussions with the applicant. So they have been aware of that from day one. I think they have, they have worked at least the potential for a connection into their design. But no, we did not discuss actually recording an easement for public access down to the lake.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Fernandez. Any other questions of staff? I don't see any. I do see Alder Verveer is here. Alder Verveer, when did you wish to speak, or do you wish to speak?
Thank you, Chair Zellers. I can proceed now if that's in order.
Yes, that would be fine. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, good evening, Commission. I'm trying to be in two places at once, and very appropriately, I'm speaking to you from the Central Library, Lake Monona Waterfront Design Challenge public kickoff with our three finalist design firms presenting this evening. So, as much of the conversation during the public hearing has been about the Lake Monona waterfront and access to it, let me compliment the Commission on their excellent questions. This has been something that's been foremost in, I think, the minds of many downtown stakeholders ever since this, really ever since we got word that the State of Wisconsin Investment Board would be selling their property. With that said, the Lake Monona waterfront connection and public access to lake views and a potential future connection are by far the most exciting possibilities that come with the proposal before you tonight. I indeed do support the four specific requests that are before you in terms of the rezoning, conditional use, demolition, and CSM request tonight, along with, of course, each of the conditions recommended by our city agencies. Let me share with all of you a little about the neighborhood input into this application. I'm sure many of you that are longtime commissioners probably noticed the lack of a written communication from Capital Neighborhoods Incorporated. And that is not an oversight, unfortunately, and perhaps it's a compliment to the applicants that things went so well at the neighborhood meetings. We were never able to organize a neighborhood steering committee as we usually do with all downtown development proposals, unfortunately. So the first settlement district of Capital Neighborhoods, where this parcel is located, did meet with the applicants back in May for a wide-ranging conversation. There then were separate meetings with the Marina Condominium Association Board, and there was a large publicly noticed meeting actually on Flag Day on June 14th. So I was pleased when the applicants first approached me the summer of 2021 and said they wanted to get an early start on conversations with neighborhood stakeholders in time for their application to be before you actually this month, and then construction in the spring. So I think the lack of the neighborhood steering committee and a lack of a statement tonight, again, it should be taken as a fact that there is not really a lot of concern amongst stakeholders about this proposal. I think that the outstanding issues that are there are attempted to be covered and are covered by some of the proposed staff conditions. Let me say a few things about some of those issues next. First, I do think, as I said a moment ago, that the public access that they have promised to lake views of Lake Monona is by far the most exciting thing about this proposal. It's something that the applicants and I talked about in the summer of 2021, attempting to do this, and their idea for a food hall and public access exceeded my expectations. While, and I appreciate Commissioner Fernandez's and Commissioner Cantrell in particular's pointed questions about the public access and easements and so forth. While there wasn't an interest in negotiating a public easement at this time for a potential ped bike connection, as Lance McGrath, the McGrath Property Group, did with the city at 151 East Wilson Street several years ago, where we purchased that easement from Lance and received the approval of WSDOT and the Wisconsin Southern Railroad for that future connection there at the fire lane connecting between the McGrath building and the Marina condo building. This is something that the applicants, as you heard again tonight, have stated several times that they are open to discussing in the future, and have pledged the public access will be maintained. Now, do we have a written agreement on that? No, there's no MOU or in terms of the public access and how that will work. But I believe the applicants when they say it will not all be just reserved for restaurant patrons, as was discussed tonight. The next issue that received a lot of attention was one that you, Chair Zellers, brought up, and that was traffic impacts, deliveries, and the like. Early on, the applicant shared with the neighborhood that they do plan to engage, as you again heard and again tonight, professional on-site property management that would be there, if not 24/7, and actually living on-site would be there during most of the day and would coordinate the deliveries and move in and move out and so forth. So that was very well received by the neighbors that attended the previous conversations that we had. As I think you are aware, admittedly, I'm not sure if I remember this clearly came up in the hearing thus far, but the city has a long plan to reconstruct the 100 block of East Wilson Street and other adjacent block, and that is finally programmed for 2024. So you'll see the condition proposed by Sean Malloy at TE gives a nod to that and requires the applicant to work closely with city staff as we design the reconstructed street there, which will include the addition of a cycle track for the safety of both bicyclists, of course, but also pedestrians. We have a lot of ped bike conflict on the sidewalks in this area. So, if I am comfortable with the staff condition as written relating to the issue of the public right of way and planning for the future reconstruction. Frankly, if it's good enough for traffic engineering, it's good enough for me, and I think that we all have an investment in making this work. Lastly, some things that I wish I could be more excited about, but I'll explain that now. And that is, we clearly need housing. So this over 300 additional units obviously is welcome, desperately needed. The density belongs downtown. With that, though, comes the obvious concern that none of this will be considered close to low cost or affordable housing. And further, I need to acknowledge that many of my constituents will be losing the long-held beautiful views of Lake Monona that they've long enjoyed. Residents of both Madison, Mark, and Marina in particular, in addition to the loss of the sun and creating a somewhat of a canyon effect in this block, to be sure, with the construction of this building and other multifamily buildings that are proposed in this corridor, some that have been before this commission and some that are still to come before this commission. So it's important to acknowledge that absolutely this will be market rate housing and not that the need for affordability in this, as well as sustainability, were among the top issues that I shared with the development team early on. And then lastly, and I very much appreciate the condition on this one, but the long views of the building and especially the encroachment in the Capitol View Preservation Area are a concern of mine, and appreciate the staff condition and the conversation that's taken place in this hearing about that. And I really do hope that the development team, and particularly their engineers, are able to mitigate the concern that many of us have about the penthouse penetration on the rooftop there, because it will be a big deal for so many taking in this view from the lake and across the lake in particular. So I appreciate that condition, and moreover, challenge the development team to do everything they can to meet the letter and spirit of that condition and the concern that's there. Again, I do support each of the various requests before you this evening. Look forward to working with the development team. Hopefully we will have a pre-construction meeting for the neighborhood. One of the aspects of meeting with the neighborhood so early in the spring and summer, as this applicant did, is that there have been no neighborhood meetings or conversations of late. And so I do think that it would be helpful, this is for the applicants to hear, but that we have a pre-construction meeting with them and the general contractor well in advance of breaking ground, whenever that will be. We don't know when SWIB yet will be vacating the site, but whenever that will be in the new year, because it has been quite a length of time since, again, there have been neighborhood meetings with the team. So thank you again, Chair Zellers, and as always, happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Are there any questions for Alder Verveer? Thank you, Alder, for being here. Are there any further questions of staff? Seeing none, I would be looking then for a motion. Commissioner Cantrell.
I'm going to move that the Plan Commission find that the standards for the demolition permit are met and approve the demolition of the building at 121 East Wilson Street.
Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Solheim. Commissioner Cantrell, do you wish to speak to your motion?
I'm going to reserve my comments to the next, the conditional use application.
Okay. Any discussion or comments before we come to a vote? Seeing no raised hands, we'll come to a vote, and I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, the motion passes unanimously. We're on to agenda item 12, then the demolition permit. Do we have a motion? Commissioner Cantrell.
This is for the conditional use. I'm recommending that the Plan Commission find that the standards for the conditional use are met, subject to the conditions from the reviewing agencies on page 7.
Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Solheim. Commissioner Cantrell, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Yes. As Alder Verveer indicated, this is a project that we need for the downtown. It's residential, it's a housing, right in the downtown where we desperately need it. Unfortunately, it's not affordable housing, but it is housing that will meet a demand for the city. I think that the encroachments to the height are consistent with what we have approved in the past. And I think that with the condition that the developer and staff will work to reduce those is a good thing. And I hope that they do reduce the mass of any type of encroachments as much as they can. I'm very happy to see that the developers have recognizing that we need a public access to link the Capitol Square with the lake. And I think that this building observes that and is compatible with that desire that the city has. And I think that is an amenity, at least to the city, that this project provides. Again, this project is consistent with the city plans, the downtown plan, and aesthetically, I think, is a very good project and will fit in quite nicely to this area. So that's why I'm recommending it be approved. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Cantrell. Is there any other discussion, comments? Commissioner Fernandez.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm certainly going to support this motion as well. And for most of those reasons, and I'm very excited about the promenade. I want to just make it clear that I do think that's a beautiful amenity, well done, within the context of a purely private development. I would say, in my mind, it actually does preclude the kind of public connection to the lake that's been envisioned by some of the proposals. I can't quite imagine this ever becoming a bike path or anything like it for legal and engineering reasons. So for that reason, I'm disappointed, but I feel that everyone has considered that. They've worked with it as well as possible, and this promenade, I think, is going to be a very exciting addition to the city. I just wouldn't carry any delusions that it will ultimately be a physical public connection to the lakefront. But with that, I do support the proposal. I think they've done a wonderful job with most aspects of this.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any further discussion, comments? Seeing none, we'll come to a vote, and I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, the motion passes unanimously. I think we still need a motion on changing the zoning, agenda item 11. Could I get a motion, please? Commissioner Cantrell.
Yes, I'll recommend that the Plan Commission forward the zoning map amendment from UMX to DC to the Common Council with a recommendation to approve.
Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Solheim. Commissioner Cantrell, did you wish to speak to your motion?
No, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any comments, discussion in regard to the motion? Seeing no raised hands, we'll come to a vote. I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, the motion passes unanimously. And next, we need a motion about the certified survey map. Commissioner Cantrell.
Yes, lastly, I'll recommend that the Plan Commission forward the certified survey map to the Common Council with a recommendation to approve, subject to the conditions of the review agencies on page 16.
Thank you, Commissioner. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Solheim. Commissioner Cantrell, did you have any comments?
No, thanks.
Thank you. Does anybody have any comments? Seeing no raised hands, we will come to a vote, and I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you all. I think this is going to be a beautiful project. Okay, then moving on, agenda item 15, 16, 17, and 18 were all approved on the consent agenda. So we are moving on to agenda item 19 and 20, which will be considered together. 19 is Legistar 72780, located at 7440 Mineral Point Road, 9th Alder District, consideration of a demolition permit to demolish a one-story residence. And agenda item 20, Legistar 72781, same location, consideration of a conditional use in the commercial center district for vehicular access sales and service windows to allow construction of a one-story multi-tenant commercial building containing approximately 8,700 square feet of floor area and 2 vehicle access sales and service windows. And Heather is going to give us an overview. Heather?
Thank you, Chair Zellers. I will keep this brief, and I want to thank Tim Parks for doing the review of this proposal. We have, before you this evening, 2 related items, a demolition and a new conditional use for vehicle sales and service windows or drive-through facilities. This is a parcel about 1 acre in size, located at the corner of Mineral Point Road and Randolph Drive, in an area where our comprehensive plan recommends community mixed use. So buildings of 2 to 6 stories with a mix of uses. We do not have, the city does not have an adopted sub-area plan in this area. We as staff, as you've seen in the staff report, do have some concerns about the proposed building itself, but really want to focus the Plan Commission on the question at hand, and that is the conditional use being requested is really for the vehicle sales and service windows. So this building, at a single story multi-tenant building is not necessarily what we would hope to see as consistent with community mixed use in the future on this bus rapid transit corridor. However, if you really focus on the 2 vehicle sales and service windows, one on the west side of the building associated with a restaurant business, and one on the rear or north side of the building, likely to be associated with a future financial institution. As the staff report notes, the real standards that the Plan Commission should be focused on are standards 4 and 9. And so those relate to whether the establishment of the vehicle sales and service windows associated with the building will impede the normal and orderly development of surrounding property. That's standard 4. And then for standard 9, when applying the conditional use standards to construction of a new building, such as this one, the Plan Commission shall find that the project creates an environment of sustained aesthetic desirability compatible with the existing or intended character of the area. And so, in looking at some of the buildings in the surrounding area at this time, I think it is staff's feeling that the proposed building does fit in with the existing character of the surrounding area. We do believe that the Plan Commission can find the conditional use standards met. Meanwhile, no concerns whatsoever about the proposed demolition of the existing 1-story restaurant building in this space. But this wasn't an easy and straightforward review. Again, I appreciate Tim Parks and his review of this proposal. And again, would ask the Plan Commission to focus mostly on the conditional use standards and how they apply to the vehicle sales and service windows or the 2 drive-through facilities that are associated with the proposal before you this evening, as you make as you have your deliberation and come to a decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. We do have a registrant. I will open the public hearing. Registrant is Kevin Burrow, University Avenue, in support, wishing to speak, representing Kanothi Bruce Architects. Kevin, you have 3 minutes.
All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for your time this evening. Again, my name is Kevin Burrow with Kanothi Bruce Architects, and we're working with Flat Development on this project that's before you right now. As you can see on the site plan there, our site is located at the corner of Randolph and Mineral Point Road, and is basically a culmination of the recently renovated Cambridge Court Retail Center immediately to the east of us. So this will be the final installment of renovating this entire area for a robust retail environment. If you go to the next slide, please. Here you can see the site layout. And this project was before UDC earlier this year in regards to an informational review, and their feedback has helped shape this final site layout. Originally, we had a driveway running in front of the building, so basically creating a through street, so to speak, along the front of all the retail centers. And they strongly recommend that we revise the site design, pull the building forward, and try and minimize any potential vehicles sort of sailing through here at a higher rate of speed. So we have, in essence, created a nice outdoor gathering space, some green space, and then without reducing any parking, and we're able to actually pick up a more accessible handicap stall. And as you can see on the site layout, this overall site is providing a lot less pavement than currently exists. It is basically 100% paved with some minimal landscaping islands right now. So we're able to introduce some green space, some stormwater management areas, and then that outdoor gathering space directly in front of the building. So we basically were able to reduce the parking that's on site while still providing sufficient parking for this area. And the two vehicle sales and service windows, the one being on the west side and the one on the north side, are basically away from any main public views along Mineral Point Road. As was mentioned earlier, the one on the western side would be utilized for Pizza Hut, which would like to return back to this site in a smaller drive-through venue. And then the one on the northern side is earmarked to potentially be for a financial institution, where actually access to this would be from the north, heading south, and then turning east in order to provide the sufficient stacking area adjacent to the building. So it may look a little opposite based on our site plan, but that's the intended use for that. You go to the next slide, please. You can see the overall character of this area. We've got the existing Cambridge Court Retail Center shown on these images and the Pizza Hut restaurant in the upper right-hand corner. If you go to the next slide, here you can see the context of basically what is surrounding area. We have Quick Trip directly adjacent to us to the west. We've got KFC on the opposite corner of the site, and then two recently approved developments further to the east, the Mod Pizza building, and then also the recently renovated Old National Bank building, which has other retail tenants as well. If you go to the next slide, here's the overall site, the building floor plan layout showing the commercial spaces. We'll just jump to the renderings quickly. Here's the design of the building. Again, this is designed to be in context with the recently completed Cambridge Court Retail Center. Next slide, please, as well. Here's the final front-end view. And then the last slide here shows you the comparison as to how our design really ties into what was recently completed.
Thank you, Kevin. That concludes your available time.
Thank you.
Then we have one other registrant, John Flad, University Avenue support, not wishing to speak, but available to answer questions. Are there questions for either of the registrants? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Are there questions of staff? Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion. Commissioner Fernandez.
Thank you. So staff, in the staff report, you advised us that the TOD district overlay is not approved and we should not consider that. This may not be a fair question, but if the TOD overlay district were approved, would staff have a different feeling about this proposal?
Yes. Yes, I believe that, as the working draft is moving along, based on what you've seen and how you've guided us to draft the transit-oriented development overlay, three aspects of this would not fit with the direction that the TOD overlay is going. One is the number of stories of the building. So we're looking at a minimum of 2-story buildings within the TOD overlay. The second is that for drive-through facilities that are, really the essence of the proposal before you, those would need to be covered by a building. So, part of the building, not on the building exterior as they would typically be. And then the third aspect is that there would not be parking permitted between a building and the street. And so the building would be, oriented up to the corner. You're right that we have advised not to take the transit-oriented development draft into account. That is not even introduced yet to the council. And so it's, but it is good context just to be thinking of. This is a proposal that would look fairly different if the transit-oriented development overlay were to be approved.
Yeah, thank you, Heather.
Thank you, Commissioner Fernandez. Good question. Any other questions of staff? Seeing no raised hands, a motion, it would be in order. Commissioner Cantrell.
I'll recommend that the Plan Commission find that the standards for the demolition permit are met and approve the demolition of the one-story restaurant.
Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Shepard. Commissioner Cantrell, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Not on this aspect of it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there any discussion? Comments? Seeing none, we will go to a vote, and I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, motion passes unanimously. Moving on then to agenda item 20. Do we have a motion? Commissioner Cantrell.
I will recommend that the Plan Commission find that the conditional use standards are met and approve the request to construct a one-story multi-tenant commercial building with vehicle access, sales, and service windows, subject to the input of the public hearing, which we've had, and the conditions of the reviewing agencies.
Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Shepard. Commissioner Cantrell, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Yes. I obviously, I think that as staff outlined in the report, that this the plan complies with the standards for the drive-up uses of this building, and obviously it's much aesthetically more pleasing than the existing use, and the layout is much better. However, in the future, this project probably will be much different, and if the TOD standards are approved. But I think that in this project, with the standards that we have to review right now and what we're reviewing, this meets our requirements. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments, discussion? Seeing no raised hands, we'll come to a vote, and I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, the motion passes unanimously. The next items are agenda items 21 and 22. They're related, and we will consider them in one public hearing. Agenda item 21, Legistar 73121, located at 609 East Dayton Street, 6 Alder District, consideration of a demolition permit to demolish greater than 50% of the exterior walls of a commercial building. And agenda item 22, Legistar 73122, located at 609 East Dayton Street and 616 East Mifflin Street, consideration of a conditional use in the traditional employment district for a hotel to allow construction of a 3-story 55-room hotel. And I think we will be hearing from Colin Punt to describe this. Colin?
Yes, thank you again. So the applicant here is seeking approval of the demolition permit to demolish a warehouse building and conditional use for a 55-room hotel. The applicant seeking to demolish a warehouse building that has previously come before this commission. The previous version of the proposal did not preserve the facade of the Dayton Street of the Dayton Street facade of the warehouse building. It was reviewed by the Plan Commission in May. The commission found that the demolition permit standards of approval were not met and placed the entire request on file without prejudice. This proposal does retain the front facade of the warehouse, demolishing the rest of the building behind it, while shoring up the front facade and then building the new hotel into that facade. The revised demolition request has been reviewed by the Landmarks Commission and has received a positive recommendation. Given the changes to the proposal, based on previous comments from the Plan Commission, the Landmarks Commission, and staff, staff does believe that the Commission can find the applicable standards met. Again, I will be available and happy to answer any questions after the public hearing.
Thank you very much, Colin. I thought we would have the applicant registered, but I don't see him listed.
Excuse me. He is on there. It's Michael Metzger. He's registered under the conditional use.
He must be a late register and he's not showing up on what I have here. So,
hello, can you hear me?
I can read it if you'd like, Chair Zellers.
Yes, would you please, Heather?
Sure. Registrant is Michael Metzger of Williamson Street, in support and wishing to speak.
Okay, Michael, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. As you said, my name is Michael Metzger. I'm the developer for this project. This is the second time you're seeing the hotel proposal for this property. It's very similar to the previous proposal with a couple major changes. The first one, as Colin mentioned, is retaining the warehouse facade on East Dayton Street. The second one is we've added some of the building to the Mifflin Street side of the property, which now takes the form of a single family house or a 2-flat house. I think this fits really well into the fabric of the neighborhood. And then we've also removed the cafe component on the Dayton Street side of the property. So by retaining the warehouse facade, we lost about 1,600 square feet of at-grade space. So we're not able to accommodate the cafe into the final design. We did have some concerns from neighbors about traffic on Dayton Street. So I feel as though the removal of that cafe should reduce the traffic that we had as part of the previous proposal with the cafe. So I feel that's an improvement. I also did want to touch on the parking. So this property will be managed by our partner, Locale. Nitesh Gandhi is also on the call and available to answer questions. They anticipate about 30% of our guests to require parking. So with our count, that would be about 15 to 16 stalls. We did survey other downtown hotels and we saw about 40% of guests required parking. And with our project, that would be at full occupancy about 22 stalls. So our project has 25 stalls, so I feel as though we have adequate parking for our hotel use. I also want to mention that given the location of this property and the improvements the city is making to the transportation system in the area, I feel like the parking demand at this location will decrease over time. With that, I'm available to answer questions, and I appreciate the Commission's consideration of this proposal. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Michael. The next registrant is Joseph Hoey, Mifflin Street, Madison, in support and wishing to speak. You have 3 minutes.
Yeah, this is Joey Hoey. I live in the neighborhood. I was on the neighborhood group that met and talked about it. I just felt it was really important to come and ask you guys to support this because of all the work the developer did to meet the concerns of the neighborhood. So I think it's a great project and I hope you guys can all support it. Thanks.
Thank you, Joseph. Okay, we don't have anyone else wishing to speak. As Michael mentioned, Nitesh Gandhi is on as available to answer questions from 12th Street, Austin, Texas, and Madeline Kutis. Not wanting to speak, but available to answer questions from East Mifflin Street. And that is it. Are there questions of any of the registrants? Alder Paulson.
Yeah, can you just clarify on the Mifflin side? Are those houses going to become hotel rooms, and is there going to be access to the room from the street? How How is that working?
Yep. So they will be part of the hotel. So they're kind of taking the form of a house. But the access, they will have access from the front of that house, but they'll also have access from within the hotel. So yeah,
Okay.
it'll be part of the hotel.
Okay, that's access right to their rooms?
Yep. So there'll be a room on each level of the house. Will be a room. And that will be the same for the Reynolds house as well. That will also be part of this hotel.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Alder. Commissioner Spencer.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate the attention to the parking and addressing those concerns. Is there designated employee parking, particularly for those maybe working late at night?
We don't have designated parking for employees besides what's offered on the property. You know, most of our employee demand will be during the day, during you know, cleaning and turnover and things like that. So there will be some demand, but hopefully, given the location, hopefully employees will use public transportation to get to work.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner. Are there further questions of any of our registrants? Further questions? Seeing no raised hands, I'll close the public hearing. Questions of staff? Commissioner Shepard.
Hi, just a follow up to Commissioner Spencer's comment about parking for employees. If staff can just address that real quick, and is that a requirement, or is that something that, you know, the city would like? Again, a business like this to have. If you can just provide a quick comment on that. Thanks.
Yes, I can take that. The zoning code has in the parking table, parking needs for hotels are determined by the number of rooms. There's not an additional requirement for employees. The minimum parking requirement is actually somewhat more than what's being provided here. However, it is within the boundaries of an administrative parking reduction. So this is a parking reduction that's just done at a staff level by Heather and zoning administrator Katie Bannon. And so this is a compliant parking situation.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Shepard. Commissioner Fernandez.
Yeah, thank you. So I will trust our historic preservation experts that this really has addressed the concerns that we had the last time. But my question, is it possible for us to view a rendering of the facade of this, or is that available?
I can bring up the plan set if that's okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I must have missed that. I should have reviewed that myself, but if we could see that, I would be interested.
A moment.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I would just like to comment this is a real success story for the commission and the developer. I think it's beautiful.
Thank you, Commissioner. Are there further, did you have anything further, Commissioner Fernandez?
I don't, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there further questions of staff? Seeing none, Colin, could you take that down again, please?
Yes,
thank you.
Sorry.
Then I am looking for a motion for agenda item 21, which is the demolition permit. Commissioner Cantrell.
I'm going to recommend that the Plan Commission find that the standards for the demolition permit are met and approve the demolition of the building at 609 to 615 East Dayton Street.
Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Fernandez. Is there any, did you have comments, Commissioner Cantrell?
No, not on this one. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Is there any discussion, comments from any of the commissioners? Alder Heck.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you to Mike Metzger and the rest of the development team for working closely with the neighborhood on this. And so I think the neighborhood also deserves some congratulations for pushing to have this evolve in the way it did, because I think it's quite stunning how nice it is now in every regard. So thanks for doing that. This location, when it's first started, the process was in my district, but due to redistricting, it no longer is. But I really want to thank Mike for working with the neighborhood. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Alder Heck. Anything else? Seeing no raised hands, we'll come to a vote, and I will assume unanimous consent unless there is a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, the motion passes unanimously. Now looking for a motion on agenda item 22, Legistar 73122, conditional use. Commissioner Cantrell.
Yeah, I'm going to recommend that the Plan Commission find that the standards for the conditional use are met for a hotel in the TE district, subject to the conditions in the staff's report.
Do we have a second? Seconded by Commissioner Solheim. Commissioner Cantrell, did you wish to speak to your motion?
Yes, I will echo Commissioner Fernandez and Alder Heck's comments. This is a success story. It's based on landmarks recommendations that the building is very important, and the facade was very important, and the neighborhood, and working with the developer, and the developer recognizing those comments and then coming back and staying and being committed to this project. I'm very excited about this project. I think it's really going to be really a landmark one for the city. I think that this shows that buildings can be preserved in a way that makes it functional. And also this use fits into the neighborhood. And I'm as excited for this project as I am for the 390 room apartment project that we just reviewed downtown. And again, thanks to the developer in this case. I think it's excellent.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Solheim.
Thank you. I just wanted to quickly say, I will reiterate all of the comments so far. This is one I really thought about a lot after our last meeting. I felt really conflicted about it, but seeing it move forward now, when I reviewed this, I looked at the prior plans next to the current plans, and it just really kind of blew me away. I think it's really excellent design. Not just preservation of the facade, but also adding in that second house. I think the way that the plans reference future residential, it was really important to kind of maintain that residential feel in the neighborhood. So I really appreciate that thoughtful response to all of the comments and not just the facade. So kudos to the whole team. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Solheim. Alder Paulson.
So I lived across the street from this for 5 years back in the day. So I've seen this facade many times. Actually, it was one of my very favorite parking spots. Was right in front of it. So I know it very, very well. I wasn't here for the previous ones. I think this is a really interesting design. I think it looks great. I got to say, I'm both excited and a little, it's not quite the right word. Perplexed isn't quite the right word, and curious isn't quite the right word. I'm not sure what the right word is. I'm a little surprised about a hotel here, but I think it's going to be really interesting. I think that's, I'm interested to see what happens, and not in like the, like bad interesting word. I just think it's, we'll see what happens. And I think we're going to learn something about the city for putting a hotel kind of in one of these spaces. But one other comment about parking. Now, granted, it's been a number of years since I've lived down there, but actually parking during the day on the street was really easy. And I think the trends are still that during the day, it's not too bad to park on the street there. Nighttime parking on the street is a real challenge. It was already hard enough a couple of years ago, and now with all the high rises not far away, it's even worse. But I think that there may be some, if the staff is kind of in there during somewhat daytime hours, they actually might be okay being able to find parking for the times that they aren't able to take public transportation. So this actually might work out reasonably well here. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing the warehouse move into something more active and more light and more interesting things projecting onto the street. So we'll see where it goes.
Thank you, Alder. Any other comments? Seeing no raised hands, we'll come to a vote, and I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, the motion passes unanimously. 23 and 24 were on the consent agenda, so moving to agenda items 25 and 26, which are related and will be considered as one public hearing. So agenda item 25, Legistar 73204, located at 3206 East Washington Avenue, 12th Alder District, consideration of a demolition permit to demolish a car wash. Agenda item 26, Legistar 73205, same location, Urban Design District 5, 12th Alder District, consideration of a conditional use in the Commercial Corridor Transitional District for a new car wash. And Heather will be giving us an overview. Heather?
Thank you, Chair Zellers. And for this one, I want to thank my colleague Chris Wells for reviewing and authoring the staff report here. I'll keep this brief as well. So 2 related requests: demolition of an existing open style car wash building, not of a concern to staff or the Landmarks Commission at all. And then a conditional use in the CCT or Commercial Corridor Transitional Zoning District for a new car wash. The new proposed car wash is a fully enclosed version of the car wash that's there, still a self-serve style car wash. It did receive initial approval from the city's Urban Design Commission back on November 21st, and they did have some conditions that I think are relatively straightforward regarding landscaping and a few architectural details, but otherwise that is scheduled to go back to the Urban Design Commission still for final approval of the design, pending approval by the Plan Commission this evening. I think what's interesting about this site and possibly different from the Mineral Point site that we talked about moments ago is that our comprehensive plan actually currently recommends low density residential or low residential for the future land use on this site. I expect that to change a little bit as the Hawthorne-Truax plan moves forward. That's the one you heard about at your last meeting. But really what's before you again this evening is a conditional use request for a car wash in the existing zoning district that does allow for car washes as a conditional use. So I ask you to focus on that. I think staff brought forward again conditional use standards 4 and 9, same as the ones that I discussed on the Mineral Point site, regarding whether or not the proposed use impedes further development in the area that's planned for the future. And then also the standard 9, which really relates to the aesthetics and the design of the site. Again, we do have an initial approval from the Urban Design Commission. And by and large, I think staff believes that the Plan Commission could find that the conditional use standards are met for the new and improved car wash at this site. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. We do have a registrant, so I will open the public hearing. Jeffrey Natrop, East Erie Street, Milwaukee, in support, wishing to speak, representing Lakbir Singh, Refuel Pantry, Bird Street, Sun Prairie. Jeffrey, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, I'm Jeff Natrop. I'm an architect at Renner Architects, and we design car washes as one of our specialties. This car wash is what we call a tunnel wash. It'll have a high-speed conveyor in it, so it can wash cars more efficiently than the old style with the old conveyors. It also has automatic pay stations, so as you enter the site off of Melvin Court, you drive straight west, and there's 3 automatic tellers. One of them is against the building. The other is more or less an ATM or a teller machine. And the 3rd lane is for members only. If you have a monthly pass, you can just drive straight through the members only lane directly into the car wash. Once you get through the cashier stations, you make a left-hand turn and come back through the tunnel. And then you can circulate back onto the site and use the vacuums. The site is also set up so that you could use the vacuums first if you want, back out and then go through the teller station. You see 2 curb cuts on Melvin. One is primarily to come in. The one over to the north is primarily to exit, and those are left turn only out of there. We do not have any access on Washington Avenue, and I think the site is organized so it flows freely and very efficiently. The design, this is the older rendering that you see here. The Urban Design Commission had us reduce the tower that's off to the west there by the canopy so that it's more in keeping with the front tower. And we've taken off the shell on the end of the building, and the sign on the shell has also come off. Also, the owner of the project has decided to take the little red canopies off the vacuum stanchions along Washington Avenue. We have generously landscaped the site. You can see the vacuums are well screened by landscaping along Washington Avenue. And you'll see there's a large area of glass in the center to sort of show off the equipment and what's going on inside. And with that, I can take any questions.
Thank you. That is our only registrant, so wishing to speak. Are there any questions for Jeffrey? Commissioner Shepard.
Yeah, could you comment? I thought in the material that we received that there was a request that you have fencing on the site. Is that right? And is that correct?
No, here's, I think you might be talking about the north elevation. There was a concern about the large wall. And what we did do is we've changed the species of the arborvitaes along the north wall so that they're a species that grows taller. And we believe that north wall will be well screened from the residences with a sort of a wall of green arborvitaes.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Fernandez.
Yeah, thank you. Just a quick one for Mr. Natrop. What is the state of the art for water conservation in a car wash? And does this include any kind of green features that would either recycle the heat or recycle the water?
Well, there are 3 recycle tanks. If you look at the proposal, there's a slide that shows the utilities, and I show the recycle tanks below grade. So any water, you can't recycle all the water, but you can recycle a substantial portion of the water and then reuse it. Yes, it's actually a very important component of the project to save energy and cost. and to minimize the amount of water going down the sewer.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Are there any further questions? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Are there questions of staff? Seeing none, a motion would be in order. Commissioner Cantrell.
I'm going to recommend that the Plan Commission find that the standards for the demolition permit are met and approve the demolition of the one-story car wash at 3206 East Washington Avenue.
And do we have a second? Seconded by Commissioner Shepard. Commissioner Cantrell, did you wish to speak to your motion?
Not on this one, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion, comments? Seeing no raised hands, we'll come to a vote, and I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, the motion passes unanimously. And now we need a motion on agenda item 26, the consideration of the conditional use. Commissioner Cantrell.
I'm going to recommend that the Plan Commission find that the conditional standards are met and approve the request for the construction of a partially two-story car wash facility with the subject to the conditions laid out in staff's report. I do think it's in compliance with condition number 4, which specifies that this will not impede the normal and orderly development of the surrounding properties. I think actually this improves the condition on this site aesthetically and noise-wise and the other impacts which the current car wash has on the area. And I also believe that it does.
Could we get a second?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Seconded by Commissioner Shepard.
Okay.
Now, Commissioner Cantrell, go ahead and speak.
Okay. Continuing on my thoughts here. Thank you. And I think it also is consistent with standard number 9, which says that the project creates an environmental aesthetics and is compatible with the existing character of the area. I think the intended character of the area may be residential, and obviously that may not be, but that's an or, which I think is the existing character. And also the property is zoned commercial, which I think obviously this use is a commercial use. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Any further discussions or comments? Seeing none, we'll come to a vote, and I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, the motion passes unanimously. Then 27, 28, 29, 30 are all, and 31 and 32 were passed on the consent agenda. So then we come to business by members. Is there any business by members? Commissioner Cantrell.
Yes, I just wanted to inform the commission I will not be here for the October 24th meeting.
Okay, thank you for letting us know. Thanks. Anything else? Then we will move to the secretary's report. Heather.
Thank you, Chair Zellers. Let's see, looking back at the Common Council actions on September 20th, relatively light meeting. They did approve the plat at the Village of Autumn Lake, subject to the Plan Commission recommendation. On October 24th, another exciting meeting. I'll mention several of the items that'll be before you then. First, At 2403 East Springs Drive, the proposed hotel associated with a demolition that was approved earlier this evening. On Butler Street, the 100 block of North Butler, a rezoning, demolition, and conditional use for a new 32-unit apartment building downtown. Out on the northeast side on Portage Road, 4205 Portage Road, nearly 500-unit apartment complex in 5 buildings. And then on Boyer Street, 602 to 1202 Boyer Street, et al., the final plat of the University Research Park Pioneer First Edition, and that creates 9 lots for future employment, as well as outlots associated with it. And then finally, the last one I'll mention is at North Orchard Street and Randall Court, so near campus, a demolition and conditional use for a new 48-unit apartment building. Those are the main items for the 24th. On November 7th, few items worthy of note here. On North Fair Oaks Avenue, 219 North Fair Oaks, a rezoning to multifamily residential district, and then a conditional use for a 110-unit apartment building. On the south side, Cypress and Hughes Place, this is a conditional use for the new Centro Hispano facility down there right close to our South Transfer Point and Madison College South Campus. And then finally, on the west side, Grand Canyon Drive and Odana Road, a rezoning and conditional use for a conversion of an existing building into existing hotel building, into an apartment building with 153 apartment units. Also on the 7th, we will have a staff update of the Shadywood neighborhood development plan on our far southwest side near the Ice Age Trail. That update will come to you just before our intent to introduce at the following council meeting that neighborhood development plan. And that is all for this evening. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Heather. I would be looking now for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Commissioner Cantrell, seconded by Commissioner Solheim. We will come to a vote, and I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, the motion passes unanimously. And I will see you all at our next meeting, except for Commissioner Cantrell. Take care. Bye-bye.